Ladies and gentlemen, imagine for a moment the image of a woman walking alone down the street, unaccompanied by a boyfriend, a companion, or anyone else. In many parts of the world, this might be a common sight. But in certain places, it's something of a statement, a bold assertion of independence, of defiance against the societal expectations that often confine individuals based on gender. Now, let's consider what that act represents. This woman walking alone isn't necessarily engaged in a grand political movement, but rather she is standing for something far deeper, something more intrinsic to her own identity. She's making the choice to walk alone, not because she's rejecting companionship or social connection, but because she knows that her value does not hinge on the presence of someone else by her side. In societies where relationships, marriage, or the validation of romantic partnerships are often seen as the measure of a woman's worth, this act is revolutionary in its own right. It challenges the very idea that a woman's life is incomplete without a partner. This woman is not less because she walks alone. In fact, the very act of walking alone suggests a form of strength, a recognition that she is whole in herself, that her purpose is not dictated by external forces. And yet, let us not mistake this for some form of cynicism or rebellion against the concept of partnership. It is not the rejection of love, but rather a recognition that love, in its purest form, cannot be forced or shaped by society's pressures. True love, whether romantic, familial, or even a love for one's own life, emerges not from a position of need, but from a place of fulfillment and independence. This woman knows that relationships are not about filling a void or completing an identity, but rather about choosing to share your already full and flourishing self with another. Walking alone is not a sign of loneliness, but a manifestation of self-sufficiency, an act of self-affirmation. It is in walking alone that she finds herself, discovers what she values, and becomes the kind of person who can enter a relationship from a position of strength rather than desperation. Moreover, her act of walking alone reflects a deep respect for her own autonomy. In a world where people often allow the expectations of others to dictate their choices, whether it's the expectation to settle down, to find a partner, or to behave in ways that conform to traditional gender roles, this woman represents the courage to move beyond the norms and to carve out her own path. And let's be clear, this is not easy. Society can be unforgiving when it comes to individuals who do not conform. There are pressures to couple up to fit into a predefined mold, but this woman, walking alone, demonstrates the strength to resist those pressures. She chooses to face the world on her terms, not as a victim of her circumstances, but as an agent of her own destiny. In truth, what this woman embodies is a profound truth. She is a person, not an accessory to someone else's life. And her life, like every individual's, is valuable, rich, and meaningful whether or not she has a romantic partner. Her walk is a metaphor for the journey we must all take, not to find someone else to complete us, but to recognize that we are already whole, already valuable, and worthy of respect and dignity. So let us not view the image of a woman walking alone as one of isolation, but rather as one of freedom. Let it remind us that the true measure of an individual is not in who accompanies them along the way, but in how they walk their path independently, authentically, and without apology. There is an intrinsic, almost sacred quality to the idea of walking alone that transcends mere physical solitude. It is not simply the absence of another human being in one's immediate vicinity, it is the presence of something deeper, the understanding that one can stand alone, not because the world has failed them or because they are without connection, but because they recognize their own inherent worth. We live in a world where relationships, particularly romantic ones, are often marketed as the ultimate goal, the pinnacle of human existence. From the time we are young, we are told that we should find our other half, someone who will complete us. We are made to believe that there is a void within us that can only be filled by another person. The notion of completeness is often reduced to the idea of companionship, finding the right person, at the right time, in the right place. This narrative is deeply ingrained in our cultural consciousness. The expectation that a woman must find her partner and fulfill the traditional roles that society has designated for her creates a framework that limits her agency. And while this framework may be well-intentioned in its pursuit of connection and love, it fails to acknowledge the individual's right to exist without the need for validation from others. It assumes that we cannot be whole on our own, that our worth is determined by the presence of someone else. But this notion is deeply flawed. The truth is, a woman who walks alone does not do so because she is lacking anything. She does so because she understands that she is not incomplete without a partner. Her life, her purpose, her value are not dictated by another person's presence or absence. They are defined by the choices she makes for herself, by the steps she takes on her journey, by the courage it takes to carve her own path in the world. The idea of a woman walking alone might make some uncomfortable because it challenges the traditional expectations of what a woman should be. Society often tells women that they must pair up, settle down, and conform to a set of prescribed roles. When a woman walks alone, she challenges those expectations. She challenges the idea that she must be with someone to be whole, that her life has any less meaning or value if she is not accompanied by a partner. To those who might question her, who might wonder why she is alone, or what is wrong with her, the woman walking alone is not ashamed. She is not lonely or incomplete. She does not need to explain herself. She knows that her life is her own, that she is more than enough on her own. Her solitude is not a sign of failure or deficiency, but a sign of self-respect and personal strength. Walking alone does not mean avoiding relationships or rejecting connection. It means that she has cultivated a relationship with herself first. She understands that no one can love her more than she loves herself. No one can validate her more than she can validate herself. She walks alone because she has come to understand that her worth is not up for negotiation. It is inherent. It is untouchable. It does not depend on the presence of another person, and it cannot be diminished by their absence. And this is where true freedom lies. The woman who walks alone is free from the shackles of expectation. She is not bound by the need for approval or validation. She is not defined by what others think of her, nor does she seek to conform to their vision of who she should be. She chooses to walk alone, not because she has given up on connection, but because she values herself too much to let others define her. In a world where it is all too easy to get caught up in the expectations of others, to allow the judgments and opinions of the world to shape our sense of self, the act of walking alone is a rebellion. It is a refusal to be shaped by external forces, a declaration that one's identity is not for sale, that one's worth is not contingent upon the validation of others. This woman understands that relationships are not about completing each other. They are not about filling the empty spaces in our lives. A truly meaningful relationship, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, comes when two individuals, both complete in their own right, choose to share their fullness with one another. This woman is not waiting for someone else to define her. She is not looking for someone to make her feel complete. She is already complete. She is walking, not in search of something outside herself, but with the confidence that she already has what she needs within. The strength it takes to walk alone is often underestimated. It is not easy to resist the pressure to conform, to resist the temptation to settle for something less than what we deserve. The world can be an unforgiving place, especially for those who do not follow the prescribed path. And yet, there is a power in walking alone, in choosing solitude over companionship, when that companionship is not authentic, when it is based on societal pressure or the need for approval. And while some may look at this woman and pity her, or think that she is missing something essential in her life, they fail to see the richness of her experience. She is not defined by what she lacks, but by what she has the strength to stand on her own, the courage to face the world without the crutch of another person's validation, the wisdom to recognize that her worth does not depend on anyone else's perception of her. The woman who walks alone is not isolated from the world. She is simply not bound by the expectations that others try to impose on her. She is a reminder that we are all capable of standing on our own, of finding fulfillment and meaning in our own lives, without needing another person to tell us who we are. Her walk is a testament to the power of self-reliance, to the idea that we do not need to be in a relationship to feel whole or valuable. She knows that love is a beautiful thing, but it is not the only thing that gives life meaning. There is so much more to the human experience than the pursuit of romantic love. There is the pursuit of knowledge, the development of one's passions, the cultivation of friendships, and perhaps most importantly, the relationship we have with ourselves. The woman walking alone understands that love, true love, cannot be sought externally. It must come from within. It is only when we learn to love ourselves that we are truly capable of loving others in a meaningful, fulfilling way. Her walk is not a rejection of love, but a recognition that love is a choice, not a necessity. It is something that emerges naturally when we are complete in ourselves, when we are not looking for someone to fill the gaps in our lives, but instead choosing to share our fullness with another. The woman who walks alone knows that she does not need anyone else to validate her existence. She is already whole, already complete. There is a deep, often unspoken wisdom in choosing to walk alone. It is the wisdom of knowing that life is a journey, and that journey is ours to walk. It is the wisdom of recognizing that we are the ones who must give our lives meaning, that we are the authors of our own stories, not the characters who are dependent on the actions or presence of others to feel complete. In a sense, the woman who walks alone is a reflection of what it means to be fully human, to be self-sufficient, to have the strength to face the world with courage and dignity, regardless of what others think or expect. She does not rely on others for validation or affirmation. She does not need the approval of society, family, or peers to know her worth. She knows that her value comes from within, from the choices she makes, from the way she lives her life with integrity and purpose. This woman teaches us an important lesson about freedom, the freedom to live on our own terms, to make decisions that align with our own values, not those imposed by society. She teaches us that we do not have to follow the prescribed path, that we do not have to live our lives according to the rules set by others. We are free to carve our own way, to walk our own path, and to do so with confidence and self-respect. The woman who walks alone is a symbol of autonomy. She reminds us that we do not need anyone else to tell us who we are or what our lives should look like. She shows us the power of self-definition, the strength of being able to stand on our own 2 feet, and the profound peace that comes from knowing that we are enough just as we are. She is not just walking alone, she is living her life on her own terms. She is not waiting for someone else to complete her. She is already complete, and in that completeness she is free. Let us all learn from her example to embrace our own independence, to recognize our own worth, and to walk through life with the same confidence, strength, and dignity that she embodies. In our fast-paced, interconnected world, there is often pressure to follow a certain script. The idea that life must be lived in stages, education, career, marriage, children, and so on, can be all-consuming. These milestones, while important, are often treated as universal truths. Society suggests that we must follow a specific order, that there is an expected path, a predictable narrative that gives our lives meaning. But the woman who walks alone challenges this narrative, offering us a broader, richer understanding of what it means to live a fulfilling life. She teaches us that life is not a linear journey, and that fulfillment cannot be reduced to a series of checkboxes. Our worth is not determined by whether or not we adhere to the conventional timeline of relationships or milestones. Instead, true fulfillment comes from living authentically, from pursuing our own passions and aspirations, and from the freedom to choose our own direction. The woman who walks alone lives with an awareness that life is fluid, and the journey is her own to shape. When we look at her walking through the world on her own, we can see that there is something deeply empowering about being comfortable in solitude. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. Solitude is a space where one can think, reflect, and grow. It is in solitude that we find clarity, that we connect with our inner selves, and that we discover what truly matters to us. For many, solitude is where the most profound personal growth happens. In this space of solitude, the woman who walks alone finds her voice. She is not swayed by the noise and distractions of the world around her. She has learned the art of listening to her own heart, her own mind, and her own intuition. She is not dependent on others to define her choices or tell her what she should want out of life. She listens to herself, and it is in that quiet space of inner listening that she makes decisions that align with her true values and desires. Solitude allows us the opportunity to heal and regenerate. When we are constantly surrounded by others, whether in relationships, friendships, or even the demands of work and social obligations, we can lose sight of ourselves. We can become so enmeshed in the needs and expectations of others that we forget who we are and what we truly need. Walking alone gives us the space to reconnect with ourselves, to rediscover what makes us unique, and to cultivate a deeper understanding of our own hearts and minds. For the woman who walks alone, this space of solitude is not one of emptiness or lack, but rather one of possibility. In solitude, we are free to explore the full range of our potential, to stretch our boundaries, and to dream without limitations. It is in this space that we find our true purpose, not shaped by others' expectations, but by our own vision of what we want to contribute to the world. But it is important to recognize that walking alone is not about avoiding connection altogether. The woman who walks alone knows that she can form deep, meaningful relationships, but only when she has first established a strong relationship with herself. She does not seek out relationships because she is afraid of being alone or because she feels incomplete. Instead, she seeks relationships because she values the richness of human connection, and she wants to share her life with others who also understand the importance of self-respect and autonomy. Her relationships, then, are not about filling an emotional gap or completing an identity. They are about adding depth, companionship, and shared experiences. The woman who walks alone does not need others to validate her sense of self. Instead, she seeks out those who resonate with her own strength, who appreciate her as a fully realized individual, and who understand the value of mutual respect and support. What is fascinating about the woman who walks alone is that she embodies a profound sense of peace. She is comfortable in her own skin, and her peace is not dependent on external circumstances. She does not look for peace in the approval of others or in the fleeting promises of romantic relationships. She understands that true peace comes from within. It is found in the quiet moments of reflection, in the strength to stand firm in one's values, and in the courage to walk boldly in the face of uncertainty. The world often tells us that we must seek external validation to feel whole, that we must constantly be on the lookout for the next source of affection or approval. The woman who walks alone refutes this notion. She knows that the most important validation comes from within. She is able to recognize her own worth without needing to seek it from others. It is through this self-validation that she finds a sense of peace and contentment. She is not consumed by insecurity or the fear of being judged. She is liberated from the expectations placed upon her. This liberation extends beyond the personal realm into the societal realm. When a woman walks alone, she not only defies personal expectations but also challenges cultural narratives that seek to limit her. In many parts of the world, women have been taught to prioritize others' needs above their own, to make themselves small in order to fit into predefined roles. The act of walking alone is a refusal to shrink. It is an assertion of agency, a declaration that she will not be confined by others' expectations of what her life should look like. And in this declaration, she invites others to do the same. She shows the world that it is possible to walk through life without compromising one's values or sense of self. She sets an example for others, men and women alike, that they too can live with authenticity, that they do not need to seek external approval to feel worthy, and that they are already enough as they are. In a sense, the woman who walks alone becomes a beacon of possibility for others. She reminds us that we are not defined by our relationships, by the roles others assign to us, or by the societal norms we are expected to follow. We are defined by how we choose to live, by the choices we make, by the courage we show in standing tall and walking our own path. This kind of bravery, not just to walk alone, but to live authentically, is contagious. It gives others permission to step into their own power, to embrace their individuality, and to move through the world with confidence. The woman who walks alone reminds us that the most important relationship we can have is the one we have with ourselves. When we are secure in ourselves, when we know who we are and what we stand for, we are free to create the relationships and the life that we truly want. Her walk is a declaration of strength, independence, and self-love. It is a refusal to be diminished by the judgments of others, a rejection of the notion that anyone's presence or absence can determine one's worth. It is a reminder that life is not about finding someone else to complete us, but about choosing to live fully and authentically as we are. So, as we reflect on the image of the woman walking alone, let us not see it as an absence of something, but rather as an embodiment of everything she has chosen to cultivate within herself. It is a walk of purpose, of clarity, of self-empowerment. It is a walk that shows us all that we are enough just as we are, and that the journey of life is ours to navigate with integrity, courage, and independence. This woman, walking alone, teaches us the most profound lesson of all, that to be truly free, we must first be free of the need for approval, validation, or acceptance from others. We must learn to stand tall, to walk boldly, and to live our lives as the unique, complete individuals that we are. In this freedom, we find our true strength. She walks alone, and in doing so, she shows the world that it is possible to walk through life without apology, without fear, and without the need for anyone else to define our worth. In this world, where distractions come in all forms, and where society pushes us toward conformity, the woman who walks alone becomes an example of resilience. She doesn't conform to the pressures to pair up, to marry, or to live her life according to a fixed set of expectations. She walks her own path because she understands something fundamental, that her journey is not for others to dictate. It is hers to shape, and she alone is the author of her own story. There is a certain power in choosing solitude over dependence, and in choosing authenticity over superficial connection. The woman who walks alone understands the difference between healthy connection and the kind of attachment that comes from insecurity. She knows that meaningful relationships are forged from a place of mutual respect and shared values, not from a place of desperation or a need to fill a void. In this sense, her solitude is not about isolation. It is about being selective in how she invests her time and energy. She understands that the relationships she chooses to form must add value to her life, not detract from it. For many, the idea of being alone can bring up feelings of fear or sadness, as if solitude somehow represents a lack. Yet this is a misconception. Solitude is not a negative state, it is a space for growth, reflection, and renewal. It is in solitude that we have the chance to examine who we are, where we have been, and where we want to go. It is in those quiet moments, alone with our thoughts, that we often come to the most important realizations about what truly matters to us. The woman who walks alone recognizes this. She knows that solitude is a fertile ground for self-discovery and personal growth. It is in those moments of quiet reflection that she can hear her own voice more clearly, untangled from the noise and demands of the outside world. Walking alone gives her the space to reconnect with herself, to understand her needs, desires, and passions, and to align her actions with her values. By walking alone, she is not seeking to reject the world, but rather to engage with it on her own terms. She is choosing to be in the world not as a passive observer, but as an active participant, someone who is fully engaged with her own life and is willing to take responsibility for her own choices. She walks alone because she has come to realize that the only person she can truly rely on is herself. In the face of challenges, she does not wait for someone else to swoop in and save her. She understands that she has the power to navigate life's obstacles on her own. This autonomy is deeply empowering. It is a form of self-respect and self-love. The woman who walks alone is not afraid to stand in her own power. She does not need to ask for permission or approval from others. Her sense of self-worth is not contingent upon anyone else's perception of her. She is not defined by the relationships she has or the roles she plays. She is defined by the choices she makes, by how she shows up in the world, and by the strength she demonstrates in the face of adversity. Walking alone is not just about solitude, it's about freedom. The woman who walks alone is free from the expectations that others place upon her. She is free from the need to please, to conform, or to fit into a mold that others have created for her. She has broken free from the constraints of societal norms and is living life according to her own terms, and this freedom is liberating. We are all shaped by the expectations of those around us, the people who tell us what we should do, how we should behave, and when we should take certain steps in our lives. This pressure can often be suffocating. It can create a sense of anxiety and confusion, especially when we feel that we are not meeting society's prescribed timeline or milestones. But the woman who walks alone reminds us that there is no right or wrong timeline for our lives. There is only the timeline that we create for ourselves. When we stop waiting for permission to live the life we want, we begin to embrace our own agency. We stop looking to others for validation and start looking inward. This shift in perspective is powerful. It allows us to move through the world with a sense of confidence and purpose. We no longer feel as though we are being dragged along by external expectations. Instead, we are steering our own course with full knowledge that the direction we choose is ours to decide. This independence does not mean that the woman who walks alone is disconnected from the world. Quite the opposite. It means that she is deeply connected to her own essence and to the truth of her existence. She understands that true connection comes from a place of mutual respect, not from neediness or dependency. She does not enter relationships or friendships out of fear of being alone. Instead, she enters them with a sense of wholeness, knowing that she is already complete, and that any relationship she chooses to engage in will only add value to her life. Her sense of independence is also a reminder to others that they, too, have the ability to create their own paths. Her example serves as an invitation for others to break free from societal expectations and embrace their own autonomy. She shows us that it is not only possible but necessary to stand on our own feet and to live a life that reflects our true selves. It's important to remember that walking alone does not mean rejecting others. The woman who walks alone can still be deeply connected to her friends, her family, and her community, but her connection to others is not based on need. It is based on choice. She chooses to surround herself with people who respect her autonomy, who understand her need for independence, and who appreciate her for who she is. Her relationships are not rooted in dependency or expectation, but in mutual respect and understanding. This is a crucial distinction. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that love, connection, and relationships must be a central part of our lives to have meaning, but the woman who walks alone knows that relationships are important, but they should not define us. Our identity is not tied to who we are with, but to who we are within ourselves. The best relationships are those in which both individuals maintain their sense of self, their independence, and their autonomy. Only then can they come together in a healthy, fulfilling, and balanced way. The freedom that the woman who walks alone experiences is a gift that she has given herself. It is a gift of self-awareness, self-worth, and self-empowerment. It is the freedom to live authentically, to make choices that align with her deepest values, and to pursue a life that reflects her true desires. By choosing to walk alone, she is not simply rejecting the expectations of others, she is choosing to create a life that is entirely her own. And in that choice, she becomes a beacon of light for others, showing them that they too can walk alone with dignity and strength. She teaches us that independence is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. It is through our own autonomy that we find our true power, our true purpose, and our true sense of freedom. As we reflect on this image of the woman walking alone, we should remember that it is not an image of loneliness or absence. It is an image of strength, freedom, and independence. It is a reminder that our worth does not come from others, but from within. It is a call to live authentically, to trust ourselves, and to find peace in our own company. It is a powerful declaration that we do not need anyone else to complete us, because we are already complete. So let us all walk with confidence, with courage, and with a deep understanding that the path we walk is ours to create. Let us find strength in our solitude, freedom in our independence, and meaning in our own journey. And let us remember that the woman who walks alone is not alone at all. She is simply walking the path of life with her own strength, her own wisdom, and her own truth. The woman who walks alone embodies a profound message of empowerment and self-resilience. She is not defined by her relationships or by societal expectations, but by her unwavering commitment to live authentically and independently. Her walk is not one of loneliness, but of freedom from the constraints that others impose upon us, and freedom to create a life shaped by our own choices, values, and aspirations. The lesson she offers is clear. We do not need external validation to affirm our worth. Our strength, our purpose, and our fulfillment come from within. It is in our ability to stand alone, to trust ourselves, and to walk confidently through the world that we discover our true power. The woman who walks alone is not simply rejecting dependency, but embracing the fullness of her own potential. She is a reminder to us all that the most important relationship we will ever have is the one we cultivate with ourselves. So, let us take this lesson to heart. Let us walk through life with courage and conviction, knowing that we are complete as we are. Let us not wait for anyone else to give us permission to live our lives fully, but instead, let us take ownership of our journey. The path may be uncertain, the world may offer its distractions, but it is in the quiet strength of walking alone that we find our deepest purpose and fulfillment. The woman who walks alone is a symbol of hope for all of us. showing us that independence, self-love, and authenticity are not just ideals, they are the foundation of a life well lived. So let us all choose to walk confidently, to stand firm in our own truth, and to remember that in our own solitude we find the power to transform the world around us. Thank you.